It's a little bit like black magic to me. Not my area of expertise, but I've got a reasonable understanding of the application security type of stuff, and again, not so much in SIEM type stuff. Yeah, I don't fully understand it like some people do who've worked in it.
Okay, as well, Pete.
Hi there, I'm Peter Jensen. I'm the LTA for infrastructure, so routing, switching, anything below layer 4, I suppose. Been with IGX for the past 10 years. We're coming up to 10 years in October. I believe me and Will actually came out and saw you, Tim, in Barcelona last year, February 2019.
Well, that's great. In fact, it might have even been 2018, the tail end of that year. But yes, you've both been out to the facility, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Thanks, Pete. And Paul.
So I was going to say it was January 19, and my expenses still haven't got over it.
That's only been a good thing. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, so my name's Paul. I do some DC cloud stuff as well as a networking background for a few years. So yeah, and I dabble with security things, but like Will, I'm not really into the SOC stuff. Mine's been more enterprisey bits and pieces and delivery of solutions around that.
Gotcha. I think they're all in a very modest mood today.
Excellent. So from the Proficio side, I guess I'll start. It's kind of new. So the name is Brian Bora. I've been with Proficio for about 6 years. Currently, I'm the director of security engineering, where I kind of manage the sales engineering resources and then what we call the security advisor resources that kind of help out post sales. I've visited the E+ offices in New York, Virginia, and Minnesota in the States. I've worked several deals with E+, both the sales side and post sales, with client success, and interacted with a lot of your personnel. And then we've been involved in some of the processes of how do we sync our portal with your portal, the NOC versus SOC, and where do we position in sales. So looking forward to sharing that information with you and really going deep into the platform and what we can and can't do. And then Brian, have you already introduced yourself to him?
Yeah, we met a couple weeks ago, but just as a reminder, my name is Brian Mendenhall. I've been with Proficio for, I can't believe it's coming up on 5 years now. And I oversee sales operations globally, business development, and the strategic partnerships for Proficio from a sales perspective. So yeah, I know we met before, and it's a pleasure to see you guys again.
Gotcha. So we've got a lot of slides. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out some of the technical details that are important and relevant for the slides, and try to skip over some of the high level slides, because I think there were some that were in here still that were kind of high level. But essentially, founded in 2010, SOC 2 Type 2 certifications with focus on NIST framework. And for an overview, SOC as a service, what makes it special is we have the 24/7 monitoring, follow the sun. We focus on actionable alerts, and then we actually have a security dashboard leveraging Splunk for analytics, which is great. And we kind of incorporate that into services, which really helps us get down to actionable alerts. We do some managed security services that kind of overlap with some of the services that you provide. So we have to game plan there, and then we do a little bit of incident response as well. So again, our SOCs are located in Singapore, San Diego, and Barcelona. And I think you're already familiar with this, but the important thing to note is when you're dealing with clients, they want to know where the data resides. So because sometimes maybe they don't want people outside of the EU monitoring their environments, we can actually store the data in AWS EU. I think it's Frankfurt. And then we actually have analysts log on via jump hosts to access the data. So although the personnel are located outside of Europe, some of them that monitor on the different shifts, the data actually resides, the event data resides in the EU, and then we leverage ServiceNow Cloud for the alert data, so the alert data is resided in the United States. Any questions there?
No, just remind me again though, roughly how many employees are you guys?
160. And then over approximately, it's kind of funny, approximately over 165 clients at this point. So employees and clients right now, they hit nearly the same number.
Hey Brian, the
All
latest
right.
count on number of employees is actually over 170. We're creeping up on 200 pretty close here.
Yep, we've done a lot of hiring there. So I think we wanted to skip over this slide with the industry recognition and the awards and different things. And I'm sorry, I think Mr. Jenkins cut out part of these slides, and I have a different copy. So Chris, if we're on a slide that we should skip over, let us know.
No, we're absolutely spot on, Brian.
Okay, absolutely. So with regards to how our services are divided and how they've kind of been architected, we do managed detection and response. You either split it up into a managed type of service, a detection type of service, or a response type of service. And there's a couple things we do. So managed, of course, we manage firewalls, Cisco's, Palo Alto's, a couple WAFs, and different things, and that kind of overlaps with E+. So a lot of times when Perficio goes into these calls, they stay away or shy away from preventing these services, and they let you put that solution forward unless you want to go with Perficio because you don't want to sell MSS for E+ and detection as a service for Perficio. So whenever we go into a deal together, we do provide managed security services, but you guys do a lot of the management of Cisco's and different things over here. And we also do manage Carbon Black for EDR, also CrowdStrike and Trend Micro XDR. And we're adding a lot of endpoint platform products where we can manage it. Then there's detection. This is our bread and butter. We've been doing this 24/7 monitoring for, I believe, 8 years, 24/7 monitoring. Essentially, we ingest logs into a SIM, have hundreds of correlation use cases, and provide relevant alerting. And we're going to go to the technology stack. The key here is use cases, both leveraging traditional correlation, and then we have machine learning AI, and then we have kind of the world-class ITSM. You guys are familiar with ServiceNow. So this is what we sell the most of, is detection as a service and 24/7 monitoring. And then there's the response element. About 30% of our clients have some sort of response element. The most common is what we call active defense, where we can take a correlation rule, and when it triggers, we can actually update a security control. The most common being network perimeter devices. We do Cisco ASAs, Cisco Firepowers, checkpoints, Palo Altos, FortiGates. It's the 7 most common firewalls we come across, with the exception of Cisco Meraki. And then we also do what we are an MDR vendor versus an MSSP, where we actually can log into a Carbon Black and quarantine an endpoint or do different things. Any questions there?
No.
All right, with regards to our technology stack, there's a couple of different ways we can work it. So the first thing is you deal with clients that aren't large enough to maybe have a SIM, and they don't have anything, and they can't afford it and can't manage it. So what we do is we provide a fully managed cloud SIM. How that works is we install Linux VMs on premise in the client's environment, and those VMs contain the software that'll collect logs, such as doing WMI polling from Windows domain controllers, receiving syslog from, say, Palo Alto firewalls, Cisco firewalls, making API calls to the cloud to pull down logs, or doing database taps for file ingestion, whatever we need to do. From there, those VMs generate the logs, obviously securely, to a universal messaging bus. It's called Kafka, actually, that we leverage for the messaging bus, and that's in Frankfurt AWS Cloud in the EU region. And then from there, we have a variety of what's called subscribers, and those subscribers subscribe to a copy of the logs, and those systems perform a variety of functions and how we provide the service. Any questions here?
Yeah, just on the logging. So, is it specific? Is it your application? So, for example, let's say I want to do some logging in, let me say my favorite technology, which is Kubernetes. Now I'm probably going to use like FluentBit or FluentD for that. Is that enough information, or do you need to actually, you know, I mean, the thing is, you know, virtual machines to me are sort of yesterday's technology. So how do you monitor and look after container platforms, whether it be, you know, a container as a service like just Docker running on an EC2, or a managed Kubernetes or something like that?
Gotcha. So that's an excellent question. So we are dealing with containers. What we found is you take whenever the container is spun up, if it has a configuration to push logs or some type of protocol where we can automatically, because it's a very dynamic nature of how you collect from containers, right? A new one spun up, if it can be spun up and push syslog, that's how we've traditionally taken in Kubernetes. But essentially, what you got to do is you got to try to make sure that when the container is spun up, there's an automated log ingestion where you don't require both sides to kind of make the connection, and that when that container is spun up, it can automatically communicate or push logs.
Okay, so if I had like an EFK stack, could you integrate to that, for example?
An EFK stack.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit? I'm not sure if I'm familiar with that.
So basically, it's just like an elk stack, but instead of using Logstash, which is sort of, you know, being superseded by FluentD and FluentBit. So it's the standard stack with like a, you know, you've got your Kibana dashboard, etc. But the logging method is now not Logstash. It's Fluent something. So FluentD is the sort of the older, more sort of I suppose, you know, monolithic application, even though it's a sort of a, you know, so FluentBit is the smaller one that runs as a pod normally on a node that then does the logging for stuff that then pushes information to Kibana, for example.
Okay. I think we kind of, but part of the technology stack we have, so we have the universal event bus, right? And
Yep.
we're switching from what's called the Micro Focus ArcSight Smart Connectors to Logstash for the consumption, right? So I think which, you know, kind of discussing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's the classic. It's the old classic elk stack. It's just that you know, FluentBit, for example, is much more efficient and a much smaller footprint, so you can deploy it in a lot more ways than you could do the standard Logstash stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the output of the logs from those particular systems, but we have worked with, say, Logarithm or different things that has an elastic backend for the search, and then maybe you can forward or siphon off logs, and as long as you can get the logs to the event bus and it follows either the native log format or some type of normalized structure, normally we can parse it and ingest it into the event bus, if that makes sense.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thank you. Brilliant.
And that kind of brings up the next point. So what is our technology stack? So because we showed you a lot in the previous slide, but essentially what you have is when we talked about the event bus, and it forwards log to a variety of subscribers. So it forwards logs to these. It's actually 4 destinations. We forward to Elasticsearch, and then clients can search in Kibana. That's where they perform log search. We do Hadoop for long-term storage. So you know, if we have 3 months online in Elasticsearch, we have 9 months of archive logs in Hadoop. And then correlation, traditional correlation and threat detection, it's kind of an older technology where you say, hey, if these 3 events have the same threat ID but different systems alert in a 15-minute period, it's very static rules. It's tough to build dynamic field sets or dynamic detections based on thresholds or outliers. So that's where Pattern X comes in, where we have model-based detection. And then of course we have the traditional correlation engine where we're leveraging ArcSight, and then eventually we want to switch from ArcSight to Elastic for the correlation. But we've been using this platform for 7 years, so it's going to take a while. We also can leverage Splunk for the correlation and event collection. So you have, one of the biggest things we do with E+ is they have many clients that are larger, and they have a Splunk instance, and they can't operationalize it 24/7. They stand up something called Splunk Enterprise Security. It's producing thousands of alerts every week, and no one's reviewing the alerts because it's just too many of them. So what they do is
So they've got what I call a log bin where they can send logs to be ignored.
exactly. So you've got this really expensive investment. People have it, and all they're using Splunk for is searching, and they want to operationalize it in a different way. And when you tell them, well, we can provide 24/7 monitoring, we have our own trusted apps, and we'll turn your Splunk into a SIM monitored 24/7 with structured use cases and actionable alerts. That's very palatable. So that's kind of the SIM stack. And then for the ITSM, or the case management, ServiceNow, it's very similar to what you do, I believe, with your NOC services, right? And a lot of the different elements. So you guys are very familiar with ServiceNow and how it works. And we've seen a lot of actually a couple of your demonstrations and other meetings. And then on the interface in the front, and what we kind of provide with the analytics on what shows or details the client visualizations, because a lot of these platforms, they don't have the best visualizations, or the data is spread out. We use it's called ProView or ProView Plus, and it's leveraging Splunk, which we can demonstrate for you. What we do is we take a lot of events of interest and present those as structured dashboards, and they demonstrate very well, and they also do very well for us when we provide our services. So did you do you have any questions there? We threw a lot at you.
None from me.
Okay.
No, I guess
I suppose, sorry, just one question. So obviously, as you said, you're using like a Hadoop thing for long-term storage. Is that just sort of within the total cost? The customer doesn't know or care. That is just behind the scenes. Or
yes.
If they wanted more, does that? How does that work?
Excellent question. Yeah. So 1 year is usually what we do. We do 3 months of hot storage, which you can search up to 3 months, and then 9 months of archive storage, where you would request to bring online certain logs from past 3 months. We'd bring those on and we can search them. Yes, for other requirements, some clients in the States, they interpret HIPAA as 6 years. Some clients have told us we need 3 years. So if that's the case, if there's a special requirement around archive logs, we extend the Hadoop storage for that specific client for a longer period of time, and then we just charge them a separate SKU.
Okay. So do you actually archive it off to like S3, or does it just stay in the cluster? I suppose my question, where I'm going with this, is that let's say there's long-term retention required, and a customer wants to get hold of some data. How quickly can he or she get hold of that data if it's been, I'm doing my inverted commas with my fingers in the air. How long does it take to get that data back? So
it depends. Usually the factor of getting that data in, say a law enforcement agency approached them and said, I need you to go back 6 months ago and search for 4 months if anyone communicated with this IP. You have to bring on 4 months of logs for searching. If you have just 1 day of data, hey, I need you on this date to see if, for an auditor purposes, 1 day I need the logs from this user, then you can do it relatively quick. So the 1 day types of searches they're relatively not complex, we've been able to do under 24 hours. For the ones that require months and months of data and searching, those can vary depending on the complexity, the requirement, the size of the customer, and other elements, if that makes sense. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. And sorry, just one thing on the is it Hadoop or Hadoop Spark?
I'm not. I don't have those details for you for Hadoop. I think it's just, I have never heard Hadoop Spark leveraged.
Okay.
As I understand it, they're putting in Hadoop, and then they're going to leverage Elasticsearch. Or Elasticsearch has a hookup to Hadoop, and then they can hook it up and actually pull in that data. But I don't have the details for you around Hadoop and Hadoop Spark this time. But we can follow up for you if you want.
Yeah, I'm just interested in it. As I said, it would be interesting, for me, just how these things fit together. So, one of the things that I've sort of been doing, a lot of stuff on in the cloud and various clouds is looking at how some of this big data is stored. So I'm a bit of a fan of GCP and what they do with, data proc, which is, a managed service, and, it's really cost effective. But, Hadoop Spark is far more efficient, but it depends on how you're plugging it in there. So I think for me, it would just be interesting to understand, what the flow is and how long it takes. I'm assuming it's super quick, but it's more for, I suppose it's more for personal gratification than anything else, but it'd just be interesting to know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We can follow up. Yeah, no, excellent question. Great questions. So some of the elements and the technology behind the service that we wanted to talk about. We also do have what's called a threat intelligence profiler, right? We have scripts that run and pull down and scrape intelligence from various sites, open and closed sources of intelligence, say emergingthreats.net, abuse.ch. And then they ingest the logs, and then we push all of those indicators to our various SIMs. We can push it to a Splunk SIM through a trusted app. We push it to our ArcSight correlation engines through a connector. So threat intelligence is included in the service, and we can actually do, because of the flexibility of the platform, sometimes you have clients, I know in the United States we have a lot of clients that are subscribed to what's called ISACs, and they're not publicly available, and you as a commercial provider that are for profit can't access that data unless you get a member that you're monitoring for, and you can only leverage that data against their data. So we've done that. So we're flexible on threat intelligence with the automated kind of comparisons, mainly leveraging IP addresses. So that's how we kind of automate it. It's scripting and then pushing everything to the SIM, and then we have reports and correlation use cases that are leveraged to kind of do that. That's included in the service. So the other thing is, there's a distinction in the industry, of course, within, I'd say, the last 3 to 4 years between MSSP and MDR. So MSSP, traditional log management and alert you. MDR is not only just alert, but detect and respond. So wanted to talk to you a little bit about our response capabilities. So again, for about 7 years, we've been, or I think it's been about 6 years, we've been doing response and firewalls. We do thousands of responses and firewalls daily. I'd say about 25 to 30% of our clients have this service. Essentially, the client signs up for active defense, and we install on those ProSoc VMs, the CentOS VMs, integrations where anytime correlations trigger that indicate, hey, they're banging away at the door, we send the command to integrate kind of in a SOAR way, and then push and update the security controls. For example, with Palo Alto's, we update EDL's, external dynamic lists. For Cisco Firepower, we can update security intelligence lists. And then we block IP addresses, but usually we also, within 30 days, we also release those IP addresses, because you don't want just thousands of IP addresses in the ACLs. And then for endpoint detection and response, of course, this has come up more recently in a lot of EDR platforms. They overtook a lot of the technical capabilities of McAfee and Symantec and Kaspersky. So what you have now is Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, and Trend Micro, where we can actually perform quarantining on endpoints and actually respond. So not only you detect malware, you quarantine the endpoint, so you perform the containment action as part of incident response, and then the client can go back and actually leverage or do whatever they want. These are the two main response services, obviously, with our SOAR and what we've got configured with Ansible and ServiceNow. There's a lot of other elements that we're working on with response. Obviously, these are the two we're targeting, and then of course Palo Alto XDR and Microsoft ATP are the two next EDR platforms that we're targeting for response for EDR endpoint. And then firewalls, we have almost all of them with the exception of Meraki, SonicWall, Ubiquity, and a lot of times we don't have those because we rarely ever see them, or the API doesn't support updating ACLs to block IPs. Any questions on response or the differences between MSSP and MDR there?
Yeah. Sorry, I've got just a question. So, what is the? So let's say a customer's got some firewalls, for example, or lots of firewalls over everywhere. You mentioned like a CentOS thing. So is that a requirement, or is it? I mean, how do you? What is? Let's say somebody wanted some response for their firewalls across Europe, what does that entail from a sort of a deployment point of view? And when you've mentioned you mentioned things like APIs. I mean, is that how you're interacting with them, or how is it actually, how are you doing the do, if you see what I mean? So how is the infrastructure sort of set up to enable you to change those configs on those devices? And do you need it? Is it like a SaaS option, so I don't need to deploy things, or is it you've got to have like a Proficio VM installed per site or per set of, how does it work?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. Yeah, let's discuss for a little bit, and then I think this will answer it. So essentially, you collect logs in a SIM, and log data collection occurs, and then you've got your SIM. And remember, our SIM is performing that correlation in the AWS cloud, right? Now you've got a detection where, say, an outsider IP is performing an Nmap scan, or there's vulnerability scanning from a blacklisted IP. Those are the correlation rules that we can configure for the client to say, when that happens, just block the IP address. Now, normally the SIM has that information, and it doesn't have access a lot of times to the firewalls, the management interface of the firewalls, or can't necessarily interact with those firewalls because it's on a different network. So normally what you need to do is you need to push from the SIM that command to the Proficio collector to say block the IP address. And then that particular collector is on the network that can access those firewalls and actually perform the block. Now this is older architecture, right? It's still in place, obviously, for on-premise firewalls, but essentially, yeah. What we started off with is we had to have the SIM send to the CentOS VM collector, and then for Cisco firewalls, we'd have to run scripts that would SSH and update object access groups through automated scripts. I had to do the same thing for Palo Alto and different things. What vendors have come out recently with, in the last, say, 3 years, they recognize the ability or the need to blacklist at scale IP addresses. And there's no sense of having to block an IP address to log into, let's say, 100 firewalls within an organization. So although we can do this architecture where we're running scripts and moving into firewalls through automated scripts and updating ACL policies, the preferred method is actually, it's still sending to the ProSoc VM and then updating a single, what they call usually dynamic threat lists. With Palo Alto, it's EDL, where you can update a single list, and then the Palo Altos are subscribed to that list, and then they update themselves. So FortiGate, Cisco Firepower, and Palo Alto, and then AWS, actually, with GuardDuty, we've integrated with AWS WAF, where the WAF has a blacklisted a block list, and we have scripts to jump in and update that list and dynamically block it.
I guess some of those like Juniper, which make that very hard work, you'd have to do it the old-fashioned way with Juniper, right?
Yeah, some of the firewalls, we still, if you jump in the environment and they don't have firepower modules and they're ASAs and those are the internet-facing firewalls, you still have to leverage that old method of using automated scripts to SSH and do that, and that's still the case for Juniper. And we've been seeing less of Juniper at this time, so I don't think there's been a lot of need to progress that particular capability. So usually the reason why we send it to a ProSoc VM is because you can't publicly access that type of ACL or change to perform that task. But absolutely, if the need is, and this is what we're kind of migrating to with some clients, if they have APIs or interactions that we can access from our cloud, and it's public, it's public facing, where we can update that dynamic threat list or security control from our cloud, then we can absolutely do it. And that's what we're doing with automated EDR response with Carbon Black or CrowdStrike, right? We're cutting out the CentOS VM, and then the interactions come directly from our environment, just directly to their SaaS-based cloud. And that's kind of going to be the case for a lot of these other integrations that we've been working on. Is when it's SaaS, you're going to be cutting out a ProSoc VM that has to be on-prem, and the calls are going to be coming straight from our environment and talking with the cloud. Does that kind of explain things a little bit?
Yeah, it does. So how do you validate that that's actually? I mean, is that something you're? I mean, I suppose with APIs it's easy. You can just get like a success, but with how do you validate that for sort of the new and old?
Oh, I mean, good question. I mean, over the years, we actually we would do with the scripting and different things, with the pushing to the ProSoc VM and different things, we would add it, we would get a verification from the script, and then just to be sure, 30 seconds later, we'd perform an additional check and have the automated script actually grep for those changes. APIs too, we have failure codes and different things for API connections. We have an R&D team, so it's different depending if you're dealing with an API or an automated script. There's all kinds of error handling, and over the years, depending on the nature, there's verifications that go into place. And then when those error codes happen, we usually have alerting to our SOC 24/7, and if they can, they'll take initial action for troubleshooting. And if they can't solve it, usually they escalate to engineering, and we have a kind of playbook or kind of runbook procedures and standard operating procedures around those, depending on the nature of the integration. So there's a lot there. There's a whole different type of, depending on what you're dealing with, verifications that go in. But we have a lot of error handling built in. Usually we can fix it through automated scripts, but then a lot of times we do sometimes forward those to our SOC, who troubleshoot further and then escalate to engineering if there's any problems or issues encountered.
Cool, thank you.
Excellent questions. Absolutely excellent questions. So the
Brian,
other
Brian,
thing
it's
that,
Chris here. Brian, can I just ask a very quick question? How hard or how long would it take us to maybe get integrated and working with Cisco Meraki? And the reason I ask is I know that due to the current situation that we have from a pandemic side of things, Cisco have worked very hard on their strategy going forward and what they want to drive as key technology solutions and services to market. And because we've heard it in the UK today, which has just been announced, that it's extended home working. Meraki is going to become a major part of Cisco's strategy and direction going forward.
So Chris, I mean, we get this. Meraki has become really relevant the last 3 years. It's increasing. So obviously we want that capability. I mean, we looked at it, I think 3 years ago when we started Cisco Meraki, and it's called the graph or the dashboard API. And you can look into the API. In order for us to integrate or automatically update or block, we need a way to update an ACL or use a dynamic threat list. When we looked into it 3 years ago, and then I think when we looked in I think it's the dashboard API a year ago, from what we could tell and when we performed the assessment, there's still no way to update and block IP addresses. We could be wrong. Maybe there's now dynamic blacklists or different things you can do. But when we've assessed the API, we could not do it. It's been put in twice and requested several times. We just haven't found the APIs.
Did you look at like I mean, the thing is, I love Cisco. I've been doing Cisco for 20 years. Meraki I love. Their firewalls are not really that great. The APIs aren't massively open. But did you look at Threat Grid? Because that's the way that Meraki is moving. That's how you do a lot of dynamic stuff now via PX Grid.
We have not looked at Threat Grid yet. We do not at this time. No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
We could put in feature requests to look into that, but upon the assessments and different things, and you can reassess. We can reassess, but I mean, we've assessed twice. I think we've assessed Sonic Wall.
Yeah.
But for the rest of them, obviously, we've performed. ASA checkpoint with the new checkpoint manager, past R77, and Palo Alto with the EDLs. So we've evolved a lot of our responses, but Meraki, we've had a heck of a time.
Yeah. No. I mean, as Chris said, I mean, it's there's a big push around cameras and analytics and facial recognition and should people come in, and it seems to be quite popular. That was all. So you know, I don't disagree. You know, Meraki don't make it easy. You know that, you know, even though they were bought by Cisco, they're still not integrated.
No,
but
no, you're right.
You know, it's different. You know, good tech, but it's still. I mean, would I use one of their firewalls? Only if you paid me. But that's my opinion. You know.
Well, quite honestly, I mean, Cisco purchased SourceFire years ago.
Yeah.
And you still have to subscribe to monitor a Cisco firewall, eStreamer services, and then the Cisco ASA syslog, the traditional syslog. And clients apply blocks or do all these different things, and it's really complex. It's really less straightforward for our analysts, for our customers, how to manage policies. And then Meraki kind of, oh yeah, Cisco purchased it, but the logs are completely different. The capabilities are totally different.
Yeah.
So it's different code bases, different logs, and frustrating for us sometimes.
But you know, I would rather have SourceFire than the old IPS. I remember the old IPS, and that was, you know, that was a complete disaster. So, you know, I do understand. As I say, it's lots of these different things. I suppose it's, you know, they have things like titration to help out and whatever. But obviously, the idea of somebody going out and buying every Cisco product just to be able to get some logs is slim. But yeah.
The Cisco, the old IPS is great for us because it just never trigger anything.
Exactly.
God for it to trigger on anything. So it would just be like, okay, I think it's working. We see 2 events a day, but this is pretty bad. We think we're missing some stuff. All right. So another service we provide that's very popular is the risk-based vulnerability management. Essentially, we see this is one of our biggest increasing business units. Right? We see over and over again, and I'm sure you've seen this. Client has Rapid7, they have Tenable, they have Qualys, and they have 11,000 vulnerabilities and 150 pages. And what they normally do is they take their critical vulnerabilities, they try to remediate as many of those as they can. If they have time, then they move down to the next level. It's a very serial approach. And a lot of times they're remediating vulnerabilities that aren't necessarily being used by attackers. And a lot of times they miss, say, medium or minor vulnerabilities that are public facing without a compensating control that attackers would use definitely and pop them. So we do the risk-based approach. Essentially what we use is Qualys, the threat management model, and we whittle down vulnerabilities and actually get it down to, okay, here's the ones that are riskiest, can we score? And then we provide them, say, on a bi-weekly basis. Here's the vulnerabilities you need to remediate if you want to keep your organization great. Here's the ones that are the top. Go after these first. I know it's a medium vulnerability, but it's being exploited in the wild currently. So there's so again, to review, 24/7 SOC monitoring, risk-based vulnerability management, the response with active defense, and MDR. And managed security services, usually with E+, we go into the call and you say, look, we're going to push our services here, but I need you to sell SOC monitoring. SOC monitoring and response are the two most common services we push, but we do have these other things available, if that makes sense.
So I'm going to ask you another question, Brian. I'm sure you'll be sending me daggers later, but okay, so I've got a question about this risk vulnerability management.
Yes.
What is that context? What do you mean by that? Because to me there are various things you can and cannot monitor with Qualys. What is the context here?
Yeah.
You know, where are these vulnerabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So leveraging Qualys, right? Qualys is one of the most relevant vulnerability scan platforms. It does the traditional vulnerability scanning. It's moved into containers and different things. But essentially, Qualys performs scanning, and usually on a weekly basis, and the outputs are enormous. It tracks, you know, a lot of vulnerabilities, and usually the output of those scans is in the thousands. And clients
so let me rephrase that question. So, you for one of your customers, for your risk-based vulnerability, what is the percentage breakdown of type of devices? You know, just like, you know, if there's like, you know, what are the top 3? Is it like firewalls are 30%, servers are 30%, containers are, you know, that's what I want to sort of understand. You know, what things are you getting Qualys to actually check for?
That is a good question. So if you were to ask me that 2 years ago, I'd say almost always it's 100% on-premise controls where clients have a firewall and they have an internal scanner and an external scanner, and they scan their public IP addresses, and their cloud presence is Office 365. Lately, it's all over the place. There's been RFPs lately. I think we're involved in E+ where they say we don't have anyone in the office, but we have 100% AWS. So we need you just to scan AWS. Oh, and by the way, we do gaming, and we're gonna spin up containers. And we're like, okay, well, how many containers do you think will be active? They're like, we don't know. We'll know at game launch. If the business is X, we're gonna have 30, 40. If we hit X, we're probably gonna have 200, 300 hosts. Yeah. So it poses challenges for pricing and different things. So although we're due to COVID, we're seeing a lot of clients say, hey, we don't even have offices anymore. We're 100% cloud, and we only want you to monitor Azure or AWS. You still have the hybrid usually, and it should return with COVID. On-premise, you have a number of IP addresses. It's traditional security controls and Windows and Unix systems, and then some type of cloud presence with AWS scanners and different things.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the reason I'm asking is so one of the projects I've been involved in is with CWPP products for a bank. So container security platforms, etc. And Qualys was never on that list. So it'd be interesting. I mean, maybe another session or something, or just a pointer on the Qualys coverage, because it doesn't really enter into my mind for container platforms at all. And it's interesting you say that. So the product that this specific bank has brought in has directly replaced Qualys because Qualys was not doing the job.
I was going to say, yeah, when I look at it, if you're scanning, on-prem resources, typically you're going to configure it with some credentials that allows it to access the system, right, Brian?
Yeah, credential scans, absolutely. Yeah, and a lot of our clients leverage that usually.
Or even without, like if it's just, I don't know, say services in a DMZ, then just find all the services that are live that it can, and then try and look for vulnerabilities against those. Whereas when you're looking at AWS, for example, yeah, it's like you can do the try and gain network access to see what services are open on a set number of endpoints, but in terms of scanning the actual the contents of it, is that normally done the same? Like in your experience, the ones that are doing it now, are they providing that credential-based scans on Linux and Windows instances?
Yeah, so my background is mainly SOC and SIM content, but I was in a production environment just a few last couple of weeks where they do a large webcam business, and they spin up in their AWS environment actual Qualys instances, several, and they perform scanning and do all these different things, and so it's actual instances spun up, and I think it might be credential scans as well. So, and we've seen Qualys has container security. I guess I'm not aware of as much feedback as I'd like with regards to how effective they are at the container security. I didn't know, or I haven't heard of them being replaced there, but I'm sure it's a little bit more, it's a little bit newer for what I've seen for our BVM service. We do have some clients that are there with a little bit of that, but I don't have as much information on that particular subject as I like for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Rich, I'm kind of looking at it thinking, well, from a customer perspective, what is the difference between Proficio's vulnerability management as a service look like? What's the difference, the effective difference from the customer experience if they went with some of the other management from Proficio, but went with E+'s VMAS? I honestly don't know. So maybe it's an offline conversation.
Yeah, and I think what's key here is it sounds like I think E Plus and it was you guys have different regions and different services you provide you prefer, but normally when we go into a call, okay, we're proposing managed security services. E Plus is going to manage the firewalls. For vulnerability management, we're going to do that. We're also going to propose virtual CISO services. We just want you guys pitching the SOC services. So you let us know what preference you'd like.
Yeah, by the way, from our point of view, Brian, E Plus is just another vendor. So actually, it makes no difference to me really whether it's I sell E Plus's vulnerability management or yours. I actually don't really care much about the difference other than customer satisfaction.
Right.
It feels like a nice problem to have, right? Let's go find a VMAS opportunity first, and then cross the bridge when we come to it.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I do agree though that maybe there's an offline conversation, Will, just to kind of try and suss out, maybe where the lines are drawn.
Yeah, Richard,
so
I think
we can be kind of crystal clear with the sales team, but from this team perspective, I think we're mature enough to, cross the bridge when we come to it.
And Richard, from my perspective, I do come across, and I think I've thrown a couple your way to have a look at that. There are certain opportunities that I look at and think, yeah, we could do this. It kind of fits in our bag, but maybe the actual scope of the work, which might be asking for internal testing to be done, people on the site, I think, well, we can't do that from over here. And I'd much rather throw that in your direction and for you to be the lead in those opportunities, as long as the fact that maybe as we go down the line, there is the offset of those services being projected or propositioned to be a Proficio set of services.
Mm-hmm.
My personal feeling is if you guys were doing that, one, it might dovetail into the rest of it, and secondly, if we had a problem with our internal delivery of something, it's a bit harder to kick someone's ass. Whereas if you've got an external supplier doing that, it's maybe a little bit easier to get stuff fixed. Anyway, let's move on.
And we're not marking our own homework at the end of the day. There's no point us going in doing a load of tests and then coming up with a proposition that, by the way, you're crap, you've got to put everything through us.
Gotcha. Yeah, so next thing is usually one of our biggest businesses, and we know this is present, and we alluded to earlier, you bought Splunk, you haven't operationalized it. So we have trusted apps that we install from the client. They're Splunk approved. They can be on-premise or cloud. And we install the apps that contain the correlation content, the integration with ServiceNow, the threat intelligence, Splunk Health. So we do full management of the Splunk. Usually the client will maintain admin access. We'll have admin access as well. The analysts receive alerts from our ServiceNow from their Splunk instance. They actually go into the Splunk and monitor out of the Splunk, perform searches. And then we can provide expert on call, use case management, build out custom dashboards and correlation searches. And then usually what we do is we get, say, a Splunk Enterprise Security instance that was producing hundreds or thousands of alerts, or just a Splunk Enterprise instance that just wasn't producing any alerts related to security value. We get it down to actionable alerts, and we can demonstrate that in the demo for you to kind of show how we achieve that. But it's been going very well for us. Obviously, this is going to continue to be the case as people continue to purchase Splunk, make a huge investment in it, and then not be able to perform the 24/7 monitoring. So right away, if you have some of the largest clients, they have Splunk. Well, what are they doing with it? And that's where we get it. Plus, what we found is a lot, especially in the United States, a lot of the existing service providers, they say, yeah, we'll co-manage your Splunk, and then they don't have any apps, and they just use the default configuration. And then there's very little value they provide. So we've been very strong at displacing a lot of the existing service providers, and then operationalizing a lot of Splunks where there's 2-3 man shop and they can't do 24/7.
You sorry, somebody gonna?
Sorry, I was going to ask. So if I've got a Splunk customer, could you do like a health check and recommendations, etc., potentially leading on to a managed service?
Yeah, that was one of my questions. Do you find yourself getting involved in kind of fine-tuning and optimization maybe of existing customer Splunk platforms?
Yes, that's actually sometimes our entry point. So we do assessments, right? And we have like a former sales engineer from Splunk, and they you know, so they kind of know how to perform the health checks. And we've done that where we can, and that's often our icebreaker. You say, come on, as part of professional services, you run a health check and you discover, okay, your data models are all messed up. This is messed up. This is out of date. This is out of date. So you normally sign up for professional services hours. And then after that, then we try to lead in with a conversation of where we get in the environment. It's not a one-time thing where we can push the 24/7 monitoring, not with just the health apps, but threat detection with the logs coming in. But yes, absolutely, that does come in.
Do you have, the other question I had is, do you also have a kind of like a CSP model for reselling Splunk as well to customers that don't already have Splunk?
Mr. Mendenhall, did you want to kind of touch on that? Or anyone?
Sorry, what was the question again?
It's a CSP model for customers that don't have Splunk so do you want to kind of detail how clients purchase Splunk without Splunk, or how that's kind of approach the or how that works with partners?
I'm just thinking about another entry. You know, if we got a customer who might already have Splunk, but they could be paying through the nose for it, you know, is there a kind of foot in the door whereby actually we flip them to your Splunk service to save them money, and then we're one step closer to selling them a managed service? Or, you know, even if we find a customer who doesn't have Splunk but is interested in buying it and wants to manage service, you know, we just push everything through you guys.
Yeah, so we've got a couple different models, you know, and Brian's talked quite a bit around really the flexibility of our solution. And so there's a couple different versions here and a wide range of what we can offer. From one perspective, if a customer already has their Splunk license, we can simply step in, manage the environment, perform health upgrades, do some professional services to make sure that it's operating at its, you know, peak efficiency. And then, the monitoring's layered on top of that. We can also pick up that Splunk licensing. We are a Splunk reseller and can resell that license if necessary, but that is not. It's really not what we're after. We're more.
And I get that, but if it's a way in, it could be interesting. I mean, I think the first scenario is interesting because I can think of at least a couple of customers we've got, and I'm sure if me and the rest of the team bang our heads together, I suspect there's a lot more than a couple who have got Splunk, and I bet they've got Splunk and they're not using it through its true potential or got it optimized.
Yeah, no, great.
I think there's also an opportunity that if you find a customer that has Splunk and is completely disillusioned with the platform, they're just completely over the solution, they never got it to work and don't expect to get it to work. That's really where we start talking about our pro SOC services, where we say, hey, maybe if you don't have a requirement to actually own the SIM, we can position a fully cloud-hosted solution where, we take care of all the nuts and bolts. So, we often see, to just being completely candid, we often see scenarios where customers didn't get all of the value out of Splunk that they expected. And so, we definitely help in those situations.
Brian, just a quick one. Have we, with either E+ or another partner, done some sort of campaign initially to target customers who've got Splunk to sort of say, listen, let's come in, let's have a look at your infrastructure and do a health check in regard to what the value you're getting out of Splunk at the moment, and then provide you with, some sort of report and recommendations, which leads on to business for both E+, the partner, or ourselves. Is that something we've done in the past that we could replicate? If, especially if Richard's sort of thinking off the top of his head, there are a couple of customers they might have.
Yeah, usually, with E+, usually you have to interact with the different teams, right? They have different philosophies and different things. So usually when you work with the office, they assess and they think about their customer base and they say, oh, okay, let's give this a try. So some of the current deals we have, and that's the case with Illuma. We secured a professional services agreement with Illuma working with E+. They have a vCISO service, and we were able to get professional services, find a lot of errors with their Splunk and all kinds of different things. We then built faith that yes, Proficio is legitimate and knows their stuff. And now they're pushing the 24/7 monitoring, and then E+ is using the vCISO services to try to push and explain to the board why they need that. So we're doing pretty good there. So yeah, that does happen. And then a lot of these other wins that have happened, these large Splunk instances, it's just trusted relationships with E+ where they're large, they knew they had Splunk, and then we just do the icebreaker of what we do, and then they kind of think about it, sit on it. And a lot of times we get away without doing a professional services engagement or health check. We just ask them certain questions of, how many alerts do you have? And they say, well, thousands. Well, who's monitoring those alerts? Well, not, I take a look at them in email when I'm at work, but yeah. And then the client, what scares them is they say, well, wait a minute. If one of those alerts, the hundreds that are coming in, if one of them ever represented a breach, I'd be responsible. I could lose my job if I missed that alert. I need to get someone monitoring and looking at these things, or else I've got other things to do. I don't want to be processing alerts all day. So normally when you kind of sell that or push that to that Splunk client, where if they know they're going to be held responsible for that one alert and they're not actioning every alert, a lot of times that kind of instills the fear in them, and then they kind of say, okay, I want someone to monitor these alerts so someone else is taking a look at this. I have other things to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I'm quite keen in kind of finding ways of approaching some of our existing customers. And not leading with the, hey, do you want to buy a managed service? Because I don't think that's going to get a warm reception.
Doesn't work anymore, does it?
No, whereas if I can lead with quote you, that kind of icebreaker around just looking at their tooling and their Splunk deployments, then that's that. I think that could work quite well.
And sometimes what we do is we try to be as non-pushy as possible, and we say, here's how we've done things. This might help you understand how to get actionable metrics out of your Splunk, how to tune alerts, what the rules should look like, how we've leveraged our ITSM capabilities and ServiceNow integration. And it inspires them a lot of times to say, you know what, I'd like to do that internally. So if you make them smarter after a meeting and you don't push the services, then it gets in their head, oh wow, okay, I'd like to try that internally sometimes. But then they may come back and say, you know what, I don't want to do this internally. Let me bring in a managed security service provider. But you're 100% right, if that makes sense.
And I think our sales team, when we get around to enabling them, I think that's an easier message for them to have with their customers as well, or an easier conversation.
Yep.
Going straight in 2 feet first.
Can I just ask from like a SIEM, Splunk, whatever point of view? I've got two questions. One is, how do you compete against some of these newer ones like the Azure Sentinel? Because that's a pay-as-you-go, pretty cheap, pretty good, integrates with a lot of things. So that's sort of one question, because obviously, I think the other Brian mentioned, it's seen as a cloud service. Well, there are cloud services out there, so what are the differentiators? And I suppose the second one is, for these services, obviously you can automate things to sort of auto-remediate. What sort of percentage of your customers, because you've got to be relatively mature to take that responsibility to enable auto remediation via things like automation, etc. What sort of percentage would you say you're seeing of that?
Yes, so those are excellent questions. So Azure Sentinel is new, and with our you think about our architecture with a fully managed cloud SIEM. What Azure Sentinel is going to give you is search and alerting. So Azure Sentinel, if there's going to be a SIEM that we're going to integrate with or manage, it's the QRadar we still see in a lot of clients, and then Azure Sentinel is the next hot one. So with our fully managed cloud architecture, if we can stick in the SIEM as Azure Sentinel and then QRadar obviously, then we can give them that total stack and those different things. We're not there yet. How do we compete with it? Well, Azure Sentinel, yeah, it has some alerts and different things, but people still need to interact with them. And there's API integrations with the Azure Event Hub where we can pull down those alerts, and actually still action on those. So
yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I mean, as I said, I'm not a SIEM type person, but it looks some good tech. I think I suppose it's for me is a person, a Meraki firewall person or a Palo Alto firewall. That's where I see the sort of similarities. Is that like you say, it is in its first iteration. It's a new product, but then it's appealing, and I suppose it's just understanding how we can counter some of those conversations to actually say, well, you know, yeah, you can have that and it will give you X, Y, Z, but if you do the Proficio thing, you get this and much, much more. That's where I was sort of, you know, trying to understand it, because, you know, Microsoft, you know, I hate them, but they're a powerful force. You know, they, you know, Azure is catching up big time because of things like Office 365 and the ease of use of their service.
Paul, if I can jump in here for just a second, one definition or one differentiation, if I can make this, is the difference between a cloud platform and a cloud solution, right? Microsoft Sentinel, definitely cloud platform. If you look at Splunk, they have their own cloud platform, but it's not a turnkey solution, right? You still have to get in, apply use cases, tune the use cases, operationalize the platform. There's still a lot of things that you do, even though the cloud infrastructure itself is, you know, self-patched. You don't have to pay for the infrastructure. The platform is there, but the solution's not. And so when we talk about Pro SOC, you get the cloud platform, but you also get the outcomes. And that's what customers are really interested in, is the outcomes and not so much what's actually underneath the hood.
Yeah, cool, cool.
That's where I would differentiate. And
More
also
the difference between SaaS and PaaS, really.
Yeah. And with these types of more kind of, I hate to say like entry level type solutions, we've been competing against Alien Vault, you know, or I should say we've displaced Alien Vault for the last several years, right? And not that Alien Vault is a cloud solution necessarily, but to say that it is kind of this more entry level, the presentation is that anybody can turn this SIM on and have the solutions that they want, and that people come to the end of Alien Vault pretty quickly and its capabilities. And so I think what we're going to find with Sentinel is that people, because it's intended to be one SIM for all, is that people are going to come to the end of the capabilities of that somewhat quickly, you know, left to themselves. So, you know, with our solution, it's the outcomes that we're more going to be focused on, that the customer, less input by the customer and better results.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that was it for me. And like you say, it's almost like the Proficio overlay, isn't it? It's the skills that you're applying, because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily that you're writing millions of lines of code, but you're applying your expertise over many years to actually, like you say, operationalize and actually deliver on the outcomes that people want. I mean, as you said, I mean, I used to use Alien Vault, you know, back in the day, and it was okay, you know, but it's not for everyone, and like you say, it can only go so far. But then Splunk is like this. I've never had the pleasure of Splunk. I never want to have the pleasure of Splunk. It seems to be sort of like a, you know, it's not like a Swiss Army knife. It's almost like, you know, 50 Swiss Army knives that you have to try and figure out how to use. And I think that is for me, the benefit of your service.
Yeah, the thing I was going to say is we've got a customer who they've got a lot of stuff in Azure. So for all the reasons that people go with Azure, then they go with Sentinel, and I can see the point that you're making. You know, they'll come to the end of that. Like, the whole seems to me is a good time to get people to rethink managing their own SIEM. Like you say to anyone now, are you going to build and manage your own mail server? God, no. Like, there's only 3 people I know who do that. It's a stupid thing to do, right? No one manages their own mail server anymore, do they? So no. Are you going to build and manage your own SIEM? No, we've moved on from that now, haven't we? You know, no, we don't have to go. They're going to keep it. Yeah, I think the same thing. So we've got a customer who's going down that. You know, they're throwing their money into the Sentinel bonfire at the moment. I guess the question is how. I don't know how long it's going to be before they realise that's potentially not the right way, because they're not big enough to even have their own SOC. So you know, they're not big enough to have enough people to to get the best out of it, to really understand what they're doing, and they're looking at paying for professional services to get someone to help them set it up. They may as well be paying for services to have that whole thing managed for them. You know, have a different, basically pay for the outcome. Don't run the platform and do it wrong yourself. Just pay for someone else to give you the outcome.
Yeah, I think Will. I mean, without telling me who the customer is, you know, are they small, medium, or large enterprise?
They're about the same size as Awin.
Interesting.
And I think from my perspective, one of you guys just hit the nail on the head. Instead of this as being a platform as a service or whatever, you have something as a solution, but you've got to manage it yourself. If it is something as a service, someone else is doing that service on your behalf. And people don't want to have to invest in people, time and resource and keep those guys trained up to be able to provide that service. They want to outsource it. And I think that's where Proficio sits. We're not a company who provides security solutions. We're providing security services. And I think that's the way the model of the market's going now.
So the bit I was meandering towards is what's the migration path? So, when someone's, because I guess, I don't know whether invariably someone needs to admit that, what they've been spending the last 3 years on hasn't worked out. When people have to change tack and decide to go, go with a fully managed service.
Yeah.
But what if you don't, you do Splunk and you do, all the other ones. There's a test at the end, I know. But if someone's got the Azure one, can't remember the name of that one either now. What you don't do that particular variant, so there's a bit of a migration. So I guess really the question is, what does the migration path look like? So when you've convinced a customer that there is a better way, how do you make that as least painful as possible and give them the least amount of egg on their face for the decisions that they made 2 years ago?
Normally what they want to do is they don't know the pricing. They don't know the pricing, and what we try to do is we try to perform a scoping exercise. And when we lead that scoping exercise and kind of break down what are the valuable log sources, what are the critical log sources, what do they have, and sometimes you share insight with them and they discover security gaps in their environment. You say, all right, we're going to provide a SIM solution, and normally the client's like, I want to know pricing, I just want an estimate. So we say, okay, let's scope it. And then we start running down the different security technologies and different things. And sometimes we share with them insight on, a lot of clients have WAFs. Do you have I'd love to get a WAF. I don't have it, maybe Q4. And then through the scoping and in prioritizing the log sources and what's the most valuable, the client kind of understands sometimes what the solution would be, and then how to play around with price, and they learn something, and then they get more comfortable with the transition. So normally when we're trying to convert a client, we go through a scoping exercise for price and dig into their environment, and there's a lot of technical back and forth, and sometimes they learn things. So that's usually how we convert them. So we get the price tag, and then once we say, here's how you can play with that around with price, here's what's included, here's what it is, they start thinking, okay, that's what it would cost for 24/7 monitoring, me not having to build any of these rules, me not having to respond to alerts 24/7.
So I think we spoke about something last time where it might have been Chris that said, you've got, maybe you're speaking to someone at a reasonably senior level, and you've got someone who reports to them that built and runs the Splunk instance, and you say to them, how's your Splunk instance going? It's great. You seeing everything? Yeah, everything. Nothing gets past it. Is it good value for money? Bloody hell, yeah. I'm worth every penny they pay me.
Did you record me, Richard?
And but you have a chat with someone else and you say, that's the bit. And I guess really it'd be nice for me to understand, I'm not necessarily going to do the scoping exercise myself, but be able to know enough to be able to have that opening conversation with our customers to say, you're running your own SIEM. I guess this is where this, the point of the call. What do I need to know to be able to start that conversation, to look at various metrics, maybe not speak to the guy who built and runs the SIEM himself, but speak to some other people and say, let's have a look at some of the metrics, some of the information I can gather, some of the tasks you're undertaking, and maybe I can show the decision maker actually they're not getting value for money out of what they're doing, or they're not getting the outcome for the money they're putting in, and get them to look at doing it before you get into that full scoping exercise. How do we tease them enough to get into that full scoping exercise?
Yeah, so you brought up a good point. There is some points of resistance. If you deal with the Splunk architect, he's not going to admit that he's failed at his job. So you're going to have to give him some outs to detail to him and allow him to admit he needs help, and make him comfortable with it, or else he's going to be a point of resistance when you begin those conversations. So how you kind of phrase and position that is when you get on, and if you're dealing with a lead Splunk guy, that's a key stakeholder, you say, look, you've got a lot on your plate. You've probably got some projects strategically where you want to migrate new data sources or build out these new capabilities, and no one's monitoring the alerts, right? And he'll probably say yes. And you say, look, we can handle those low-level tasks for you. You know, we can monitor that for you 24/7 and make it consistent, so you don't have to switch back and forth between monitoring for alerts, doing the administration of Splunk, and not getting to the tips of your job and the projects you've always wanted to do. So you sell it as, we're going to take away the really easy, the things you don't want to deal with, to let you do the strategic things you really want to get to. Usually that's how you overcome resistance with that individual that has to admit that they need help with their Splunk instance. For executives, our platform demonstrates well. We're running out of time. We can show you a couple things out of it. But executives, we demo really well and give them a lot of good visualizations. And even if they don't get into the nitty-gritty of Splunk, usually we can show them the value of the service. And that's how we overcome there. Makes sense.
As partners, what can we have access to that we can use as an appetite gainer?
Yes, so it depends on the it depends on the office that we dealt with, obviously with E+, but you can have access. Some clients prefer, they won't bring us in on the phone until, say, meeting 3, 4 or something like that. They'll try to do the scoping. They'll try to explain our services. You can most certainly do that. That's not our preference. But yeah, we can give you access to scoping. We can give you access to slide decks and different things. Traditionally, demonstrations isn't something we give you access to. But we can do videos like we're doing right now, and then kind of record scoping and give you technical information, enable you to kind of talk and discuss those capabilities. That's normally where we go. We prefer to do the scoping with you, directly with the client, and we prefer to give the demonstrations directly from us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think approach the opportunities when we come to them, but my gut feel is I think I'd like us to be comfortable to do the kind of first meeting, if you like, the first call. Reserve the right to change my mind on that if it was a big enough opportunity and we had one shot, then I'm going to bring the big guns in right on the first call. But I like the idea and prefer the idea, certainly whilst we're getting up to speed and you guys, being involved with all the scoping. To kind of Will's point, I do like the idea of us being able to kind of whet customers' appetite with some kind of demo, but maybe if that's not possible, maybe we can just build some kind of video or slide deck or something that we could perhaps put out of our pocket on that first call, just to whet customers' appetite, enough to kind of get them to then want a full fat demo from yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Schedule follow-ups, and we just record the session and we kind of deliver it for your ingestion. Or and then this I think serves as a point. What E+ or what some of our different partners have done, they bring us on premise to the office. We do the presentation, they record it, they take notes. It's one things we do. And then a lot of the reps we work with here in the States, they just know how to kind of probe little questions. They emphasize, they just get good at the traditional talking points. Cybersecurity skills shortage, rising cost of defense and breach, ever-changing threat landscape, alert fatigue, ineffective incident. They know those talking points. They kind of drill those in and probe those without offending the client, and usually that leads us down the road to those conversations or later meetings.
This is the kind of slide you're showing now. These are the kind of things I think we've really got to drill into the sales team.
Yeah, and this is usually what they want to know, and there's varying levels. What office we work with or what partner we work with. So having the conversation and educating the sales team is something we can have. And usually, if they ask the questions, get familiar and comfortable, and they're comfortable where they ask the questions and understand the SIM and the different things, so they get it in their head. Usually, they do pretty well with positioning. I think we only got a few more minutes. We have technical demonstrations. We kind of ran through a lot of the technical slides. What else can we do for you with regards to information or briefing that would really help?
Sorry, I apologise if I missed the full answer, but for example, for one of like our managed CSPM thing, we've got access to a portal, so we can see what it looks like. I don't know if did you answer this and I missed it, but what sort of have we got like a demo portal or a customer portal type thing with Proficio or not?
Yeah, so I can kind of show you real quick. We've got it prepared. Sorry about that. Let me pull it up. I'll show you what we normally demonstrate that works well.
But I mean, what do the E+ reps or do the E+ technical people in the US have access to some sort of read-only demo portal or not?
Normally no. I think the most we've done is post signing the contract. E+ as part of a client success role will actually have access to our service now and monitor the tickets and do these different things. Usually they have us do the demonstration. They usually don't have access to it.
So the E+ lean on you quite heavily, presumably.
In the later meetings to really show the technical aspects and answer the technical questions when you get the engineers on the phone or when you're trying to close the deal and want to sell it, and because of the way we're able to demonstrate.
Also, guys, there is a copy. So we do have a recording of the dashboard demo in the partner portal. I know that we kind of like sprinted through the partner portal in a previous call. But if you go in there and then under resources, there is a video that's titled Security Dashboard Demo. And this is where Brian, I think it's an hour long, and Brian actually goes through the security dashboard. So if you guys want to see that firsthand, either the video or we can schedule a follow-up call where Brian can open it up and you guys can kind of ask questions, poke and prod, and go through, go through it in more detail.
I must have missed that on a previous call, the partner portal. How do we get access to that? I'm just on it now. Do I just request a login or something? Do
I? Yeah, just let me know if you guys want to send me your email addresses. I'll make sure that you guys have accounts and make sure that you guys are set up.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that.
Yep. But essentially, for what the demonstration entails, and you'll see this video, it's changing, right? We've got a little bit more capabilities, but usually we don't get into the weeds in this part of the technology stack. We can show our Splunk demos and different things, show that we have apps, but essentially we show our Splunk ProView Plus and ServiceNow, and there's several points to hit in there. First thing we show is the dashboards and how we kind of talk with alerts and discuss use cases and how is a single pane of glass and how we kind of tune the alerts and different things, and we tell a story and examples of how we work with our clients to get down to actionable alerts through analytics. And this is kind of the discussion is at a high level, and you can see this in the video, but we have hundreds of correlation use cases, and we apply those against the millions of events we collect. And essentially, we show them there's a variety of security controls here, and we tell the story of in January, we were high on alerts, we did some filtering and tuning. February, March, and April, we were doing pretty well. August, September, we got some new use cases and there's some tuning required. There's some malware in the environment, there's FIM alerts. And so we have those discussions and we get it back down to say 5 to 10 actionable alerts. Another thing that really does well is we say we have event dashboards that can do threat hunting. So as part of COVID, we did a remote monitoring dashboard to see where people are authenticating from, and we review those in service meetings. So you can kind of demonstrate, Cisco AnyConnect, Palo Alto Threat Vault, Citrix. We kind of go into the meetings and show where people are logging in from. And we do that for a variety of events of interest, Windows failed authentications, et cetera, et cetera. And we find all kinds of things that kind of help their cybersecurity hygiene and find things that weren't alert notifications, actually, misconfigurations in their security controls, all kinds of different things. And then we show off the response. We say, here's our active defense. This is how clients normally configure it, right? And this is an example of a data set of one of the firewalls. And they say, you know, you can get as conservative as you want with the service or as aggressive as you want with the service, where some clients do hundreds of blocks every week. Some clients do only a couple of blocks a week. So you define what you want, if you want to block every Nmap scan that comes in from the internet, or only if it's against this critical server and it was allowed and the IP is blacklisted and it's SSH, then initiate the block. So we kind of, and then that plugs us into MDR and response services and what we do. And then the last thing that really sells well is what we call threat insight. And this is what sells well to the executives. Essentially, we say that, look, we just showed you the top 10 use cases that triggered. We just showed you our response. But if you show that to executives, that doesn't tell them anything. What they want to know is their risk. They want to know their gaps. They want to know where they should take their security operations next. And then we kind of show how we take their security controls they're logging into the SIM. We take where the zones they're coming in and their ability to detect threats, and then we give numbers based on where they're at and detail where they're weak, and then an overall score. And then we kind of detail how, well, wait a minute, this is a multi-tenant system. We have 160 plus customers. We stick you in a sector and we can do peer comparisons where, okay, this particular data set, they've got all kinds of security controls. Their scoring is 69, but if they want to improve, they should likely get Tripwire with like FIM or something for the endpoint. For core, they're lacking an analytics platform for east to west traffic. And then you can kind of say the sector average for retail, which we've stuck this data set in, is 49. You've done well, right? The client average is 47. So when clients score low here, when they only have Office 365 and next gen firewall and a domain controller, they score very poorly. And then they can make the case with these metrics to kind of bring this to the board and say, here's where we're weak based on third-party validation. I need CrowdStrike. I need to get this. I need to obtain this. So this demonstrates very well for executives there. And then, of course, we do dig into our service now, talk about the integrations, kind of detail. Here's the ticketing system. What ticketing system do you have? We drill into an incident. We show them. We actually show them, you know, an incident that occurred and kind of the activity streams and the security operations in action and what the security alert notifications look like. And then we kind of show them a run book. So we have like a 30 minute video on this in the partner portal that kind of digs into the details of how this works. We kind of demonstrate what we show and sell, and it's customer facing, so you can't actually provide or maybe I guess download it or show it in a presentation. But what normally when you detail this part of the technology stack, the client understands, oh, that's what a 24/7 operation is. Those are actionable alerts. I don't have that today, operationalizing my SIM. We're just getting email alerts and no one's responding to them. This would take me a while. I think I like this service. I think we're at the hour. Any additional questions or anything else we can answer?
Not from me. I think it's been good. It's been very useful, actually. There is a part of me that thinks I wonder whether it is worth doing a follow-up session to kind of do a kind of deep dive into, you know, the portal, if you like. But it probably is worth us getting the partner portal access first and downloading and looking at the video. The other thing I think that we need to book in, but maybe this is just one for you, Chris, and maybe myself and Will, is to start thinking about, you know, what content and the messaging we want to give to the sales team. I mean, I've had a flick through the slide deck that you attached to this meeting request. There's some good slides in there, but there's also 47 of them. We're definitely not going to maintain interest with the sales team with 47 slides. And there are a few in there that I think probably, you know, play very well for E+ in the US, but, you know, wouldn't go down quite so well in the UK. Yeah. So I think it's probably worth us maybe having a catch up next week for an hour or so. Start maybe going through those slides and kind of picking the ones that we go, yeah, that's good. We'll put that into the deck. And that one we'll leave out, and think about what slides might be missing that we need to put in. You know, just the kind of agenda and the flow for what we're going to do with the sales guys.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I've got a question just for the Brian and Brian's from my perspective. Are we in a position, and have we done this in the US, if the guys in E+ over here think they have an opportunity or have a client that maybe is a little bit disillusioned with what they have from a Splunk perspective at the moment, are we able to maybe offer out some sort of proof of value, which is maybe positioned, let's say 3 to 4 months before the end of the renewal with what they have, so that, because we can sit on top of what they've got, we don't have to displace it straight away, but maybe we could provide, if there are some relevant customers out there that they think they've got, that maybe we can provide that kind of initial proof of value stroke demonstration to a customer.
Yes. So yeah, in order for us to provide a proof of concept beyond a demo, the client actually has to change their security controls. We actually have to start receiving logs, and we have to onboard them almost fully to get to alerts. So a lot of times, proof of concept, it's a high level of effort for us versus a SaaS service.
Yeah.
So we normally discourage POCs. What we do encourage is, say, an opt-out after a year, or if they really want to push it, because sometimes it can take, depending on the client. For Splunk, we go in there and do a health check, and we find out, oh man, they're 2 versions behind. This is broken. That's broken. None of the data models work. And then we may have to work with the client for a month or so to even get it to a working state. Additionally, with our fully managed cloud SIEM, to stand up the VMs and then have them change the firewalls, give us the credentials to ingest SaaS logs, a lot of level of effort in their end as well. So we try to stay away from POCs, and normally when we do POCs, we have a convert rate, I think, of 80 or 90%, and it's just flip a switch. They're essentially onboarded. Is usually.
I'm comfortable with that in selling services, and what I'm talking to people now is, sort of the message around firewalls is stop paying for hardware refresh on firewalls, stop paying for firewall licenses, look at another way of delivering, cloud delivered security services. It's just a year's subscription, just give it a go. So, when you're talking about doing an in-depth POC, it's not hard. It's not as hard an ask to say, look, this is the outcome that you're going to get. It's only a 12-month subscription, or is that not an option? Is it a longer subscription with a breakout clause, or can they just buy a 12-month subscription? And we're saying to them, look, what we're expecting is that you're going to keep this for several years. But the proof is in the first 12 months, right?
Yep. Unfortunately, guys, I have a hard stop. I have to jump off. But it's nice meeting you. Thank you for the meeting.
Cool.
Appreciate
Okay.
Thank
you, Brian.
Yeah,
Lovely.
Chris,
Thank
what's
you,
the
Brian.
minimum contract?
Thanks, minimum contract value. I mean, we've kind of said, and we have a ballpark figure that, from our perspective, we need something 50K and above. Otherwise, it's kind of doesn't really benefit and become of any profit for us as a business.
Sorry, is that contract length, not size?
That's contract value for, let's say, for a year period.
Right. Okay.
That doesn't bother me. I think that's reasonable, if I'm honest.
And what's the?
But I expected that to be 1 year as well. I wouldn't expect something like 3-year total contract value of 50K. I'm not sure we want to get.
No, absolutely. And
2.5x for 3 years, or 2.6x, or something like that.
Yeah, about 2.5. Yeah, I'd say so.
I mean, it's kind of covered on, if you look at the slide deck that was attached to the meeting invite, slide number 13, which I noted that you did actually was presented, but with a different style template.
Yeah, so
I would hope the kind of customers that we're going to start talking to are way above the 50K, and we're going to be more around the the 150K plus. And even then, I would be sincerely hoping that we're kind of onboarding customers that actually will grow to even bigger than that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think
the CrowdStrike deal recently for 2 million. Will.
From my side,
that was based on getting rid of a load of people.
We do need between us to make sure that the value of the contracts that we're winning together are sizable, because we want it to have a resonating effect through the rest of your sales guys. There's no point turning around and saying we've just signed up and we're working with this partner and we're doing 40K size deals. That's not what they're looking for.
No, I completely agree with that. And as services director, if you like, I'm in exactly the same place. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't walk
40K
away.
He's not going to put his daughter through private school, Chris.
She's not going to private school, I'll tell you that. But we're really looking to move the dial on our annuity revenues. And to do that, 50K, yeah, great. I'll happily sign some 50K deals, but I want 10 of them then. You know,
Agreed.
I think it's more interesting if we're at the 150 plus mark. To be honest, and actually your point about the sales guys, that is very true. I think for sales guys, you know, at the end of the day, they're all carrying, you know, pretty punchy targets actually. You know, if we really want to get their interest, then, you know, we do need to be talking bigger deals and high margins.
And your sales guys are obviously they're targeted by margin, not revenue.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And typical revenue
there is
or
no,
typical margin stacks that they have.
Unfortunately, there is no kind of scorecard around services. So you know, they are paid on margin.
Yeah.
So unless the services deal is of a certain size with a high percentage margin, then, you know, it's not going to be of huge interest to them.
And
they can go and make.
What's the average margin that is retained on a typical deal with your guys from a managed service perspective? What do we need to achieve to make it attractive for you?
Cards on the table. We've never sold a managed service deal in the UK.
Okay, that's honest. I like it.
You know, we have annuity service customers, but not managed service customers.
Right. Okay.
And the large one that was sold was in Netherlands.
Okay, that's it. That's the other thing. It'd be really good to get to know the countries that you operate in, because I'm getting more and more of these tenders coming through that are being placed in various different European countries where we obviously don't have the footfall at the moment. But if you're in those areas, I'm more than happy to start pushing more of these.
We won't shy away from anything in. We won't shy away from anything in Europe.
Right. Okay.
You know, is a simple answer to that. You know, we don't have armies of engineers, you know, in European countries. All of our professional services team is based in the UK, but pretty much all of our customers actually are European or global customers that we're providing services to. You know, we'll either provide those services remotely or via, you know, trusted, approved subcontractors and suppliers within the European countries. You know, I prefer to stick to the you know, core European countries, you know, Netherlands, Germany, France, those kind of places. Yeah. Don't want to get too obscure.
Okay. All right. So, Will, from your perspective, from the guys you've had on the call today, and unfortunately we did have to lose Paul, who had a lot of questions and seems quite interested, or it sparks his imagination. What would you like as the next steps? I mean, Richard and me can obviously go away with yourselves and start talking about what we want to do in regard to presenting this to your sales teams, and you know what that process is and how that looks. But from a technical perspective, what would you like as next steps?
I think you showed a couple of bits and bobs on there that are really just sort of, you know, aid memoir, or whether you call it, I don't know whether it said battle card or something like that. But for me, just to refresh, if I went into a meeting tomorrow and I was discussing with someone and I was, you know, saying, look, what does your security infrastructure look like? And they say, oh, we're running in such and such instance and we're doing this, that, and the other. Just to give me the cues to line up the conversation to say, well, you know, what are the sort of metrics that I need to gather? Maybe there's a certain size of, you know, you're probably identifying a certain size of installation and or environment that would map to a minimum of 50k managed service deal size. So how tall have you got to be to ride the ride? That's probably the first. So how do I, and I said at the start, I'm not from the SOC world. I've never designed you know, a SIEM platform or anything like that. So I don't have that much of a clue about it. So what do I need to do to identify a customer? Maybe you've got some sort of aid memoir stuff, or battle cards or something like that. You know, what's the pertinent questions for me to ask? How do I identify something to then get you guys in and not waste your time, but also not miss any good ones?
Yeah, no, so I think we've got some sales plays. And in fact, I think, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've got some stuff which actually is E plus endorsed, stroke is meant for your sales guys. And I think I've got 2 or 3 scenarios of those which I can send over, which kind of says what are the challenges the customers have, what are the specific questions that we should be answering, asking the guys. So I think I've got some stuff, and I can get them sent over to you, Will.
Cool.
Yeah, we've also got so Will, kind of what I'm hearing is how do we get the conversation started? Like, what questions do we ask, and how do we just start to nudge the conversation in this direction, or what we say in business development is like asking these kind of leading questions. And we, in addition to the sales play battle cards that Chris has, we also have some scripts that we use from a business development standpoint on questions to ask and what we would consider our discovery call. I can send that to you as a guide as well. And it really starts with, at its core, what are you currently doing for security monitoring and SIM, and that's the direction we want to get. Once you start to unfold that, there's a lot of directions we can go. If you start, kind of a funnel shape, if you start at high level, what does your security infrastructure look like? What compensating controls and things do you have in place? And then you can even dive into specific scenarios. And we do this a lot in business development. If you're talking to a financial, customer or customer in the financial industry, it's easy to say, hey, this happened to so-and-so bank across the street. Obviously, you don't want to hit with too big of a hammer on this. But it is easy to get into segues that way and say, what are you guys doing to prevent that from happening at your guys' organization? And I wouldn't be that forward, but that's kind of the direction.
Yeah, one of the messages I'm doing at the moment is, well, businesses don't know what size they're going to be next year. If you said you're going to have to build and design a SOC stroke SIEM environment, you're going to make multiple guesses at what everything's going to be next year. Whereas if you subscribe to a service, all you've got to do is upsize or downsize that service.
Absolutely.
You're taking a lot of the guesswork out of it. So if you get bigger next year and the product launch works, fine. Just start paying more license money. You haven't got to redesign. So yeah, it's a bit like the cloud computing paradigm, isn't it? Where servers come in 2 sizes, too big or too small. If you buy that service, you can just right size the service. So yeah, and I get the bit about you say to the Splunk designer, man of your caliber, you're wasted doing this infrastructure. You should be, man of your caliber should be going after the attackers. Let someone else take care of the basic stuff.
A question. It's probably a question for my guys, really, because I've not been at IGX long enough. But thinking about our customers, right? We've sold a lot of security into our customers. The type of customers we have, security is very important for them. I'd be surprised if a lot of our top customers don't have SIEM solutions. Back to the managed service conversation, I think as a company, we've probably just always shied away from managed security services because we haven't had that capability to deliver it, and that's the wall we're trying to break down right now. But have we sold any SIEM solutions? We sold any Juniper JSA?
No, and the thing is, obviously, before I came along, which is only sort of 2 years now, a lot of them have got SIEM solutions, but not necessarily. There's 1 or 2 customers who are quite advanced with what they do. They've got a full, proper SOC, but that customer that has the most advanced SOC has just outsourced a lot of that MDR to a vendor because they feel they can do a better job on it.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think you take a WorldPay who spend an inordinate amount of money on Splunk. We know there are some improvements they can make in other areas. You just know that they're not getting the value for money out of it.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, Paul messaged me in the middle of this conversation. He's dropped off now, but they could be a target customer actually. WorldPay. I suspect there'll be a classic example of probably spending a small fortune on Splunk and not really doing a very good job with it at all. And we've got a good relationship in that account.
Yeah.
But we won't have gone anywhere near that previously until now, right? Because without the relationship with you guys, Profitio, that's not a conversation we would want to go anywhere near.
Absolutely. I think that's the type of engagement that we would want to have with you is, that's kind of go in there and have a conversation with WorldPay to do that assessment and health check of, you know, are they actually getting a decent return and are they getting some efficiencies out of what they've invested in?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. What's the details of that? Because we do like a health check stroke assessment on Palo Alto, which is a piece of piss to do, but we, you know, we know what we're doing with that blindfolded. So, you know, we can just offer that customer that sort of health check. What are the, you know, what is your offering? What is your offering available to us? So if you take a customer who's spending multiple millions of pounds a year on Splunk, so there's obviously an opportunity there. So you're more likely to be willing to do the assessment there. What is the assessment? What's the, you know, what's the data sheet on it? What do I need to know to be able to email the guy I know who works in their security team this week and start a conversation about, hey, would you like you know, to have a look at your Splunk?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I mean, let me and Brian have a chat with Mr. Borer to find out, because we've done this in the past. Let's see how we position this to WorldPay, because I mean, there's such a size of an organisation. Whether it's from my perspective or your perspective, is this shouldn't be something you should be just leaning in and saying, listen, we want you to pay huge amounts of money for something. You already pay a lot of money with us. Let's see how we can help you with your investment. So we've done this in the past. Let's see what we've done. Is that a question, or is that a conversation you'd like to have seriously in the next week or so?
I think it's an action. Yeah, I think it's an action we should definitely have. I mean, assessments is something that, you know, we're big on, and in fact we're about to do quite a lot of campaigning around assessments, and you know, it's data center assessments, cloud assessments, security assessments. Yeah. You know, it's absolutely our bag, and this feels like it might be something that we just want to quickly get into the toolkit, if you like. Yeah. Because if we're
not serious about doing it, why are we even on this call?
Yeah. You know what I mean? If we're going to generate some leads around security, around assessments and security assessments, then this is something else to put in the melting pot, right?
So how do you position those assessments? Because I've been in situations in the past where, you know, I've worked with companies who provided us millions of pounds worth of revenue, and if you have a conversation with them around assessments, so first thing they say is, listen, I pay so much money to you guys, don't go asking for any more. So do you price it? Do you say it's part of the service because you are such a large customer, this is something we want to push in your direction?
I'll say this particular account, we've got you can do it as a value add. Like some of the Palo Alto ones, we would typically say, look, you spend so much a year with us, for your renewal, rather than just cut us a renewal check every year, let us do something for that. Yeah. So let us come in and at least make sure that things are working well, things are up to date. You know, we're not just fleecing you by taking your money. Yeah. For other customers where the dynamic is maybe different, and you know, if it's a different product set, you can offer an assessment and, you know, do it as a value add in the sense that, you know, you think there'll be significant opportunity on the back of it. So typically with some, whereas with others, it would be, you know, a chargeable one. So like all the pen testing type stuff, you know, they're flat out. The ISO stuff is flat out chargeable. These are a bit like, you know, you go to Quick Fit and you check your brakes and you end up walking out with £200 brake discs.
I think for us as well, the assessments, I mean, they fall in different categories, right? I mean, yes, there's the existing customer where it's potentially a bit of marketing your own homework, but where it's more interesting is when you're using it as a vehicle to land and expand. You know, so we might be selling the network switching and routing to a customer, but actually we haven't really been doing a lot with them for security. But then we might, you know, start talking around our assessment capability. And as long as we're talking higher enough up the food chain, you know, if you're talking to the security architect and you say, do you want a security assessment? He's always going to go, no, right? No. If you're higher up the food chain, and I mean, cloud is probably a better example. You know, a lot of our customers employ some very clever people that run their cloud environments, their cloud platforms. But that doesn't mean that, you know, the C-level guys or the IT director at the top, you know, sitting above all of them, it doesn't necessarily know whether he's getting cost optimization in those environments, right? Yeah. So the idea of having us come in as a trusted partner who's already doing a lot of networking or something for them to actually then do a cloud cost optimization survey, you know, that's our kind of foot in.
And I don't think it works like you said. If they're already paying you a lot of money, it's because there's value in what you do. So they don't say, oh, you know, for some of our large customers, we were offering an assessment before, and it was, you know, we were charging good money for that, but there wasn't a case of, oh, we pay you enough already. If they're paying you lots of money, it's because they see the value in what they do. It's the cheapskates who don't put much business through you that whinge about paying for something else. The customers that put a lot of money for you, one, don't mind spending a lot of money, but two, actually see there's value in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just along those lines, guys, I just wanted to point out we do position a little differently based on account size. And so if you have, if WorldPay is a, Fortune 50 company, we're not going to be shied away with that. We just need to know what to expect entering that conversation, where they may already have their own SIM engineering team and in-house SOC. But I think to your point, Richard, is the positioning and the playing there is how are you retaining precious technical resources? Are you, how are you staffing your SOC? And then, you kind of lead your way down this path. What are you guys paying internally to provide this service? Can I provide you a quote for a comparable service where we provide that service and we can compare apples to apples on cost? Because I'm willing to bet it's going to be like, if you're doing 24/7 in-house monitoring, it will be, we have studies done on that. Forrester did a total economic impact of our services, and our customers see an average of 402% return on investment with our services, and that the comparable cost for $200,000 in our services to create your own SOC, your own software, your own engineering team to manage and operationalize the platform, it comes out to like $2.5 million a year. It's insane. So if we come across a Fortune 15 company, that's the conversation, is what are you paying for what you're getting? Can we have a conversation where you get the same thing and you pay a lot less?
Yeah.
Is there any way of just finding, just on WorldPay before we want to move on or disband, how easy is it to find out when WorldPay may be coming up for their next renewal of their Splunk subscriptions?
I don't think it'll probably be that hard. But, it starts by probably having a chat with the account executive, and Paul Melvin, who's unfortunately dropped off, but he's the lead LTA on that account, and he's very well connected and very well regarded in that account. They pretty much hang on for every word he says.
Good. Okay. All right.
And we've sold a lot of time into that account, and they see the value in it, and they pay a lot of money for Paul to do work for them.
He's well connected in to all the the cloud and containery type people. There's a guy, Eddie Hoffman's in Mike's sort of cloud security team. So Eddie's I guess a little bit more generalist, and probably quite a good guy to have a chat with about that as well.
But I think that, as I say, I think just got to think about all the different angles. Got to get this right for the sales enablement. I mean, part of the sales enablement, I think, is going to be having one-to-one call with each of the AEs. There's only 5 of them. It's not going to take, it's only 5 hours of our life if we do an hour per guy. And we can go. They group their accounts. We do it via FG&E, focus growth and emerging accounts. So I do regular FG&E reviews with all the sales guys anyway. Once a month, I spend an hour on the phone with each of the AEs, and we do an FG&E going through their accounts. Right, okay, what's going on? Where could there be potential services opportunity? But I'd suggest we do a full account review with each of the AEs after we've done the the training with them, if you like. And let's see. Even if with each of the AEs, my only ask would probably be, let's pick 2 accounts maybe from each of their FG&E lists, just to start with, to see if we can open up and get some meetings with. And if we get some cadence into that, the next month we'll pick another 2 accounts, and keep going like that, really.
Yeah, no, agreed.
But obviously I need to lean on Tom, as Tom being the RVP and now the sales director as well for the UK. I don't want to tread on his toes from that kind of sales enablement perspective and the account mapping and things like that. But I think there's going to be quite a few accounts that we can introduce you to. But for each of them, we probably got to figure out, what is the entry point? What's the what is it that we're going to introduce you to?
Yeah. Each one's going to have a slightly different hot topic that we need to address and have a conversation around. But
I mean, I can think of one other big customer that is both a UK and US company, huge, and I know they've got Splunk, and I bet I bet they're not doing anything with it either. I bet it's largely sits there collating data and sending the odd email or something, and that's about it.
Yeah, gathering dust like the rest of the sim platforms.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me if it's anything like a data center anyway. It wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. Will, is there anything from you you'd like from us as an urgent next step? I mean, Richard, you and me can catch up later on in the week in regard to maybe pinning down who your account guys are and the best way to do the enablement from a sales perspective side of things.
I mean, I like first. I think what we need to do is we need to, book in this hour WebEx with the sales team to introduce them to Proficio. But as I said, I just want to make sure we get that slide deck right. I know I keep banging on about it a bit, but I've been here long enough to know that they could glaze over or not think it's relevant to them. So I just want to really make sure that we kind of get the agenda for that right. Put the right slides in front of them to get them excited, and I want to tee it up as well, actually, with some more general kind of how do you approach selling managed services. So I'm going to take the Proficio completely out of it. We do have a portfolio of E+ delivered managed services that we're not really selling in the UK at the moment. So I want to do some training around, what actually is on the truck from an E+ perspective, but how do you sell managed services? Because I don't want them, and I think they all would today, just if I mention managed services, they're going to view it as that's sacking people, isn't it? We've got to change their mindset around that to look at it differently.
Okay, yeah. I'm surprised your sales guys aren't ruthless.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, as soon as I've got the stuff to start those conversations with people, so that what I said, like whether it's battle card or whatever. As soon as I've got that, I'll start the conversations, see if I can secure some follow-up meetings, and we'll show we're serious.
Cool. Yeah. No, I like that.
I mean, that's the other thing is that is the other good news, right? Yes, we need to do the sales training and introduction, all of that, but yeah, we do regular FG&E reviews already. So by enabling the likes of Will and myself and Pete and Paul, if we see stuff that we think we should be jumping on now, let's not wait. WellPay being one of them. I'll make some calls this week and see if we can get that one going.
Yeah, because I've got a follow-up call with City Fibre. There's no reason why I couldn't be having that conversation with those guys. Yeah. There's lots of them now where it's good for the sales guys to be trained up, but the reality is
I'll tell you what, City Fibre is a good one. One for you to maybe have a think about, but if you've got any kind of thoughts, insights, industry trends, that kind of thing around security and security services specific to the service provider industry, I could get you an hour with them very easily, and some quite influential people as well. So we are currently in the process of putting together a load of kind of like innovation workshops for them. These things are going to be rolling probably 2 a month for 6 months, covering all sorts of topics. But security is one of the pillars, if you like, that we'll be covering.
And they're growing, so it's not like we're displacing an existing large thing that somebody's designed and it's got to let go of.
Do you know who City Fibre are? Have you heard of them?
Yeah, I've heard of City Fibre, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be the next OpenReach, right? That's basically their business model, and they've got billions of private equity investment to do that. We're doing a lot of business with them at the moment. They're I was going to say a recent win. I mean, they're not really that recent, but it seemed to take forever to really get contracts signed. But we're doing a lot of work with them, and as I say, they've come to us to kind of lead some innovation workshops across various technology stacks. Security being one of them, data center, cloud, et cetera, et cetera. If you've got any kind of strong case studies, that kind of thing, or views on the stuff you've done in service provider, we could probably bring you in on that.
Just give me the tools and I'll get cracking. And I'll get cracking with all the others, and I'll come back to you and I'll let you know who, how I've got on, and go from there.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we might have stretched our time, so I don't want to keep you especially keep you away from your families and everything.
No, it's been good, Dan. Thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure.
Really
I appreciate your time and appreciate the questions that have been thrown at us. I mean, I'll circle back with both the two Brians that we have. Let's make sure we furnish you with the right information, collateral, documentation, case studies, etc. Richard, let's you and me circle around this week as well. If there's some immediate ones we want to think about how we can go after, whether it's City 5 or WellPay or others, that's a good one to start working on straight away. But then let's think about how we want to position the deck, the slides, and the proposition to your sales guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
That'd be good. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, should we catch up later in the week?
Yeah. Let's definitely do that. Brian, have you got anything else to add?
No, I appreciate your guys' time. I will follow up with portal access, so you guys can see the demo as well as everything else.
If you could just add,
I think
just give access to all of us that were on this meeting invite. I mean, then you should be able to get all our email addresses off that, I think. Let me know if you can't.
No problem. And if we want to schedule a follow-up call to actually do a live demo, we can do that as well. So.
Cool.
Perfect. Okay, gents, thank you very much for all your time. I'll let you guys get on with your evening, and Brian, I'll let you get on with your day.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Lovely. Thanks
Good.
all.
Take care.
Thanks.
Cheers,
bye.
Cheers.